Okay, let me record it. All right, so now it's going. Yep.
And then can you go over the cytopathic effect versus the latent viral infection?
Yeah. So cytopathic, what that means versus latent viral infection. So latent viral infections are things, okay. So cytopathic. So if you look at cytopathic, cyto is cell, right? So cytopathic effect. It is pretty much that once a virus gets inside a cell, it can change what the cell looks like. So an example, or what the cell is actually doing. So it changes, if you're looking, so maybe, so we use COVID again, and I don't know if COVID-19 actually does this, but if you had, pretend somebody was infected with COVID and you went in and you took a sample from their lungs, right, and you did some sort of biopsy, if you could look at their cells, and so maybe the cells, instead of not being these normal like little alveoli that are all, and the membrane, the epithelium is all nice and flat and looks normal, maybe what happens is it makes makes the cells look round or something. So the virus gets in there and it just changes what the cells actually look like. So if you're a pathologist and you're looking at cells all the time, you might be able to look at it and go, oh, that's not normal. That's not what that's supposed to look like. And different things are going to look different ways.
Okay.
Okay. Then latent infections are things that you might get infected with something, but you might not get symptoms right away. So the herpes viruses do this a lot. So maybe if someone gets a herpes virus and then they don't have any symptoms, but then they'll have a cold sore appear or something. So some sort of sore. Chickenpox is another thing that's latent. So you never really get rid of it. It's in your body for forever. So it's funky. So it's in there all the time. So if it's in there all the time, it can flare up, and you just don't ever get. They don't have a way to get rid of them.
And then I think the only other thing I had from this chapter was the stages of an infectious disease.
Okay. So stages of infectious disease. So if we look at this, okay, so this is time, right? And then this is number of like pathogens, or the book says infectious agents. Okay. And the way it goes is it just kind of goes, it goes like this. So it's like a normal little bell curve. So the first part, number one, is the incubation stage. So incubation means you don't have any signs or symptoms, but you have the pathogen in you. So it's in there, but it's not doing anything yet. Okay, then the next one is number two. It's called prodromal. So prodromal, you'll start to feel bad. So it might be where you're like, oh, I don't feel good. I think I might have a bug or something, and you might get tired. And in my case, it's when I try to eat a whole bunch of vitamin C or something to try to fix it. Okay, then there's invasive. Okay, so invasive, there you feel really sick. So you have lots of signs and symptoms. So you don't feel good at all. Okay, and at the very peak, they call that acme. So acme is just the top. Okay, and then once you hit acme, that's when you're going to start feeling better. Okay, and acme is leads into 4, which 4 is the decline. Okay, so the number of organisms in there start to go down, and you hopefully are starting to feel better. And then the very last part is convalescence. So convalescence is where you're like, geesh, I was sick. I'm getting better, but I don't feel 100%. So acme is the top one, and lots of times they don't really count that as a stage. But so it goes incubation, prodromal is when you just start to feel bad. Okay, and invasive. So then acme, decline. Okay, and then convalescent means you're getting better. And everything has like a different, most diseases have different incubation periods or different, like, so like the incubation time for COVID is what they're saying 10 to 14 days, I think. So that's when they're saying, okay, after this period, if you've been exposed and after this 14 days, if you don't have symptoms, if you haven't entered into prodromal or invasive, then you probably don't have it.
Okay. And then I just started chapter 16, so I only have a few questions about that one too.
Okay, that's epidemiology, right?
Um, can you oh, here it is. The 3 different types of epidemiology studies.
Yeah. So 3 different types. So the first one is descriptive. Okay. So descriptive is kind of like really general. So they're looking at a disease and they're trying to figure out how it spreads. That's probably what they started doing, like in China when the first coronavirus started happening, right? They're just kind of looking and they're trying to say, okay, well, there's this number of cases, that this is how it's spreading, where is it coming from? Um, so like they're trying to just collect general data to describe what's happening. Okay, now the next one is analytical. So analytical, what they're going to do is they're going to go in and they're going to say, okay, this is our control group. These are the people that are getting the disease. And then we're going to start trying to collect data and we're going to use numbers and we're going to try to make more sense of it. I know. To me, you have to use data to be descriptive. Okay, but in theory, this is more like a study. This is more like a real, like scientific method kind of study. You're just not going out there and trying to figure out what's going on. You're trying to say, oh, look, I can compare it to this, but with I can compare the different scenarios and what's going on with people. And then the last one is they call it experimental. And so experimental, you go in with the hypothesis and you set up an experiment and you try to test your hypothesis. So to me, they're all very similar, but I don't know how to, you can't really separate them out, but they do. So this would be more, okay, you're going in. So now if they're testing drugs, right? So if they're testing vaccine or they're actually screening treatments, okay, they are going to have a control group. They're going to try to make sure that they have representative of all the different people that, like they have women, they have men, they have different ethnicities, they have different ages, and they're going to try to maybe give some the vaccine and or give others the antibody treatment, and then they're going to try to see what happens. So that, yeah, to me, this is hard because it's hard to just do. I don't know that these days anybody just does descriptive without starting to analyze and hopefully leading to experimental. But this is kind of the order we go in. When you find something new, you start describing it and trying to figure out what causes it. And then you start trying to analyze it. And then it becomes more, okay, well, now let's try to control it more and do experiments with it.
Okay. And then I think the last thing that I have a question about is what herd immunity is. Because I've heard of it, I just can't grasp it.
Yeah. Well, the idea behind it is that, okay, so if you have a whole bunch of people in the population, so think of a herd of people, right? And then let's say you have, let's make them green, or I guess, can you see the green? Does the green look different?
Yeah.
Okay, so this green person, let's just say it's chicken pox or something. Okay, so nowadays what they do is they vaccinate everyone for the chicken pox, for that virus. Okay, so there's one person out of these 5, okay, and this person has some sort of they're immune compromised, okay, so they were born with an immune system that doesn't work the same way. So this person they can't be vaccinated. So basically, the idea behind vaccines, the way that they'll work, is that if all the other people around this person are vaccinated, they protect him. So the immunity of the herd, so the idea that the herd around him are immune to chickenpox is going to protect this person, Mr. Green, from getting the chickenpox because it's not going to spread through this population because they can't pass it around. Does that kind of make sense or no?
Yeah, it does. So then
Yeah,
for COVID,
yeah.
and they say that people once they get it, well, they say that once you get it once, you wouldn't get it again. Is that kind of the same concept that like if
Yep.
someone in your family gets it, but then you didn't the first time, that you won't be able to pass it on to somebody else?
In theory. So here's the idea with COVID, right? So with COVID, we haven't seen it before in the United States. Okay, so as far as we know, most people have not ever been exposed to it before. So they don't have any antibodies to it, and we don't have a vaccine to it. So the idea of herd immunity would be that we'd have to have so many people in the population get it and develop antibodies to it to protect the other people around. Okay, but the percentages, you need a lot of the population to have it, right? And we're not there yet. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So you need a lot of people, and different diseases, like the ones that they've actually been able to research, like maybe like measles, 80% of the population has to be immune to it. And we vaccinate, right? So then they're vaccinated, so then they can protect the people that can't be vaccinated. So with COVID, like some countries let it go through. I think Sweden is one of them, right? Sweden just let it go through. They didn't shut down. But it hasn't seemed to, I don't think they've actually developed herd immunity.
Okay.
So I don't know that enough people got it, or if the people that get it die and aren't still around to protect the other people, then doesn't do any good, right? So we're not there yet. But if they came up with a vaccine and we could vaccinate people, then we could develop herd immunity. That would slow it down.
Okay.
So most of the time it works fine, but then there are groups of people, like people that are anti-vaxxers, and they might all live in the same town, right? So if they don't vaccinate their kids and they reduce the immunity from 90% down to 60%, then the disease is going to spread.
Okay. So would that happen if, say, a population stopped vaccinating for polio, then polio would come back?
Yep.
Okay.
So there are places in California where they have big communities of families that aren't vaccinating, and polio is one that they've seen come back. Like if they can eradicate it and it's gone, then it's gone. Like smallpox, we quit vaccinating for and it's gone. But there are some diseases that they just don't go away. They're in the soil or they're in the environment. So when people don't vaccinate, you get like diseases that we're not used to seeing come back. Like measles is one. So some people, when they choose not to vaccinate, um, there are measles epidemics. And measles spreads really fast, like really, really bad. It has a very high transmission rate. So it's one that, and it mean most people will survive it, but there are cases where people don't survive or there are bad side effects. Yeah, it'd be cool if we could get it, but I was listening for COVID, but I was listening to some epidemiologist the other day, and he's like, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon for coronavirus. I know.
I think that's the only questions I had from these two chapters so far. And I mean, I'm sure once I finish chapter 16, I'll have more for next Monday, but
That's fine. That's cool. All right. So do you want to go how are your, well, if we're done, that's cool. I'll stop recording it. Hold on. Let me try to stop recording it.